A prehistoric monster with no bones, no upper teeth, and a buzzsaw spiraling straight from its throat. Sounds made up, right? But it wasn't. Meet the Helicoprion, one of the most bizarre and baffling creatures ever to haunt ancient seas. For over a century, scientists couldn't even agree on what they were looking at. Was it a tail, a weapon, or something far stranger? No full skeleton has ever been found, only one fossilized part, and that part confused the world for over 100 years. So how did this nightmare fish actually work? Roughly 290 million years ago, long before the first dinosaurs took their first steps on land, the Earth was a far more alien place. The continents were fused into a single massive landmass, Pangaea. The oceans, deep and mysterious, teemed with life forms both terrifying and unfamiliar. And lurking beneath the surface was a predator like no other. It was called Helicoprion. It didn't look like anything we know today, not a typical shark, not a bony fish. And despite being one of the dominant predators of its time, we know shockingly little about it. Why? Because Helicoprion left behind almost nothing that fossilized. No bones, no spine, no skull. Most of its body was made of cartilage, flexible and soft compared to bone, which doesn't preserve well over hundreds of millions of years. Instead, we're left with just one haunting clue: a strange, tightly coiled spiral of fossilized teeth. That single fossilized structure is what started one of the longest-running mysteries in paleontology. This spiral, about the size of a dinner plate, was first discovered in the late 1800s. At first glance, it doesn't even look like it belongs to an animal. It's a smooth coil of triangular, serrated teeth, almost perfectly symmetrical, embedded in rock. For years, scientists debated whether it was even biological. Some mistook it for a plant fossil. Others thought it might be a shell, a coral, or even the remains of a bizarre mollusk. But as more of these fossils were found around the world, in Russia, the United States, and Australia, a pattern started to emerge. They weren't isolated curiosities. They were part of something bigger, something carnivorous. Paleontologists began to realize they were looking at a spiral of teeth, what they called a tooth whorl. But there was one huge problem. They had no idea where it belonged on the animal. Was it inside the mouth? Was it some kind of external weapon? Was it even a jaw at all? The fossil record offered no answers. And with no skull, spine, or jawbone to guide them, scientists were left to guess. The Helicoprion was real, but its anatomy was a riddle wrapped in a spiral. In the early 20th century, paleontology was still in its adolescence, and Helicoprion became the poster child of scientific speculation gone wild. Lacking a full skeleton, researchers began publishing reconstructions of what they thought the animal might look like, and some of those ideas were straight out of a science fiction horror film. Some early drawings placed the tooth whorl at the tip of the snout, curling outward like a unicorn's horn made of teeth. Others imagined it growing from the animal's back, like a grotesque spinal saw used for defense. A few even theorized it was part of the tail, slicing enemies behind it as it swam. The wildest concepts made it look like a buzzsaw on wheels, turning its entire body into a weapon. But these reconstructions weren't just strange, they were wrong. And the more they tried to fit the spiral into traditional fish anatomy, the less sense it made. No other known creature, living or extinct, had anything remotely like it. And the fossil gave no clues. It was as if nature had designed a predator using parts from an alien toolbox. For over a century, the Helicoprion's design haunted museums and textbooks as an unsolved enigma. Even as other prehistoric creatures were reclassified, reimagined, and better understood, This fish with the circular saw for a mouth remained an evolutionary ghost. It wasn't until the 21st century, more than 100 years after the fossil's discovery, that technology finally caught up with the mystery. In 2013, a group of researchers at Idaho State University, led by Dr. Leif Tapanila, took a different approach. They scanned one of the best-preserved Helicoprion fossils using high-resolution CT imaging. The scan revealed the unthinkable. The whorl wasn't just a random spiral. It was embedded in the lower jaw, deeply connected to supportive cartilage. For the first time, paleontologists could see how it was positioned inside the mouth. It wasn't an ornament or an external weapon. It was a functioning part of a slicing, rotating feeding system. The jaw of Helicoprion worked like a circular conveyor belt. As it bit down, the whorl would rotate inward, dragging prey deeper into the throat and slicing it along the way. It didn't chew. It didn't tear. It pulled prey in like a horror movie machine, tearing soft-bodied animals like ancient squid into ribbons. Even more unsettling, it had no upper teeth. The top of its mouth was smooth and flat, acting as a cutting board. Everything depended on that spiraling buzzsaw below. It wasn't just a weird jaw, it was a biological meat slicer. Now that scientists finally understood how the Helicoprion's jaw worked, one thing became clear. This creature wasn't just unique. It was completely unlike anything else that ever lived. Its evolutionary path was a dead end, a one-of-a-kind deviation that no other species dared to imitate. Modern sharks constantly replace rows of teeth. Piranhas slice with razor-sharp bites. Sawfish and swordfish use slashing rostra. But Helicoprion was doing something entirely different, using a circular self-sharpening spiral of teeth to suck prey into its mouth and grind it from the inside out. Its closest living relatives today are chimeras, ghostly, deep-sea fish that live in the ocean's dark zones. But even chimeras are boring in comparison. Helicoprion was a monster of its time. At over 13 feet long, it dominated ancient seas. It didn't need speed. It didn't need brute force. All it needed was that unrelenting, whirling jaw. What's most astonishing is how long it survived. Helicoprion outlived entire dynasties of marine predators, thriving for over 20 million years. And yet, when the Permian extinction wiped out most life on Earth, this strange fish vanished too, its spiral jaw becoming one of the last echoes of a forgotten evolutionary experiment. For over a century, Helicoprion remained one of paleontology's greatest unsolved puzzles. Its fossils had been misinterpreted, misplaced, and misunderstood by generation after generation of scientists. It wasn't just strange, it was humiliating. The scientific community, with all its expertise and resources, couldn't even figure out which direction the thing bit from. And yet, it kept showing up. Across continents, across decades. Always the same spiral, sometimes small, sometimes massive, but never accompanied by anything else. No skull, no vertebrae, no gill arches. Just the tooth whorl, like a mocking spiral-shaped riddle carved in stone. That is, until 2013. With the help of CT scanning and digital modeling, researchers were able to virtually peel back layers of rock and fossil. What they found was jaw-dropping, literally. The spiral was not ornamental. It was embedded in a powerful jaw, mechanically suited to a very specific purpose: pulling, slicing, and grinding prey. And just like that, a century-old mystery was solved. Not with a new fossil, but with new technology. Paleontology had finally caught up with its strangest fish. With the anatomy finally revealed, scientists could begin to understand Helicoprion not just as a weird fossil, but as a real animal, one that hunted, killed, and thrived in an ancient world that's long gone. Its entire design was built for efficiency in a world dominated by soft-bodied prey like ammonites, belemnites, and early squid. No need for crushing plates or serrated rows. Just one unstoppable inward-turning buzzsaw powered by muscle and cartilage. It's not just the jaw that fascinates. It's what it tells us about evolution. That natural selection can produce designs so alien, so unconventional, that they appear to defy logic. And sometimes, those designs work until they don't. Helicoprion thrived for over 20 million years before vanishing, likely during the Great Dying, the Permian extinction event that wiped out 90% of all marine life. Whatever advantage it once had, it couldn't survive a planet in collapse. Today, Helicoprion lives on in textbooks, museum exhibits, and late-night fossil forums where curious minds still puzzle over its legacy. It reminds us that Earth's history isn't just full of monsters, it's full of mysteries, and some of them are stranger than fiction. So the next time someone tells you sharks are scary, remind them of Helicoprion, a fish with a circular saw in its throat, no upper teeth, and a design straight out of a nightmare factory. For 100 years, it defied explanation, and even now, it feels like something nature shouldn't have built, but somehow did. Thanks for diving into the unknown with us, and until next time on Our Planet Extinct.